It's time for Tab Talks, your weekly conversation about matters of faith. I'm your host, Jennifer Rash.
And I'm your co-host, Debbie Campbell.
Being a media group, from time to time we like to bring in experts to talk about communication tips and different ways you can work on your messaging, because no matter what role you're in, you're going to need to write something at some point, you're going to need to share something at some point, and we know that just a little tip here and there might just take you to a new level. So we have chased down Montgomery writer and editor Minnie Lamberth. Minnie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be with you today.
All right. So Minnie is going to be marking 20 years independently working as a writer and editor for the world, I will say. We'll see how far that goes. But she's been in the business for more than that, maybe roughly 30 years. Is that right?
Yeah, 30, 35. Who's counting?
I know it, right? So she is definitely a seasoned writer and editor, but to be able to do that full-time, self-employed, as an independent writer, editor, author, that says a lot. So Minnie, we want to pick your brain.
Okay.
And, all right. I mean, already lots of questions, but I have to tell you one thing, Debbie, that Minnie was able to pull off during the pandemic was a novella, Miss Birdie Explains the Beginning of the World. And I'm already hooked with the title of this book. So let's start with your novella and how you pulled that off during the pandemic.
Okay. Well, I had been thinking that I have two sides to my work. One is the functional side, where I work for other people in marketing, communications, public relations. I write for people who need content, that sort of thing. But I also have the other side of my work life that feels a personal need and helps connect me to a different group of people. And that is in inspirational writing, creative encouragement kind of field. And for a long time, back in 2005, I published Life with Strings Attached, a novel that had been selected by a publisher that was seeking a literary novel with Christian themes. And so I won, and that's how it got published. Well, so for 15 years, I didn't have anything else to say fiction-wise. I was just writing content for websites and sharing on social media and that sort of thing. But I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go back to that same town, to some of those same characters, but a little older. And so I was thinking about the 20th anniversary of being self-employed would be a good time, a logical time to bring that out and share it with my friends and such. But the pandemic shifted things around, shifted things in my work life around, and I was here more often. And so I thought, I really need to move that up, because I took a tip from Shakespeare. He had written some plays during a plague, and that was some of the encouragement memes that were going around at that time was that Shakespeare wrote some of his best work during a plague. So I thought, well, I'll see what I can do. So it was really, so I wrote it, and then I asked a friend of mine to edit it for me, because I did need somebody to go behind me. No matter how long you've been writing, you need somebody to go behind you to catch your blind spots and help you see things you might be missing. And so she edited it for me. And then another friend of mine, this is why it's good to have contacts in this field. Another friend of mine did the design for me, did the cover design and the interior page design. So then it was just extremely easy after that, because I uploaded it through Amazon KDP, and then it went live. So that's how I had a book, just like that. And it's print on demand, so I don't have to have a closet full of books. I don't have to be running around to bookstores and such during a pandemic asking if they'll stock it. So it made it a very contactless process. I was able to do everything from a desk, from this laptop, to get a book into my friends' hands around the country.
Let me jump really quickly back to, you said Amazon KDP. Tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Okay, it's Kindle Direct Publishing. They used to have a thing, it was called Create Space, but that has evolved into Amazon KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. And it's just, you have an Amazon account, and then you go to a different part of that Amazon account, which is their publishing arm. And that's where you can publish ebooks and paperback. I think that's it. And And the thing that made it possible for me was that it didn't cost anything up front. That's what made it so practical. And so you just have the Amazon account, you upload the files, then I write the descriptive copy, and it goes live on the Amazon site, and people can order your work through Amazon, and then they do the fulfillment part. I told a friend of mine, I do not want to be in fulfillment. And I said, do you know what that means? And she said, no, but it sounds awful. And I said, that's where you have to take the book, you have to put it in an envelope, you have to put the label on the envelope, and then you got to drive to the post office. I don't want to do that. So Amazon did that for me. So that's how it made it economical and easy, and I didn't have to leave the house.
That's great. Uh, I think a lot of people might try to do that too. How do you go about marketing it though, Minnie, when you're
Well,
using this technique?
okay, so I started with my friends, and that's what I've done is through my Facebook friends and I have a small email list. And so I haven't done anything beyond that, but that has been enough to make it worth it for me. Because I've covered my expenses, I've gone a little over that, and so it has not cost me anything, and it's really enriched my experience because I'm hearing feedback from the people that have read it and have enjoyed it, and so that's been rewarding as well.
I like that there's a news reporter in this story, right?
Yeah,
The Welton Courier, and Hannah, what's her name? I lost it. Hannah Hayes is the
yeah,
reporter. So
yeah.
that's kind of a neat twist on how she's digging into finding the story.
I imagine she's my alter ego, but I don't know. I think it's a small town in Alabama. That's where the setting is. And Miss Birdie is an 85-year-old Sunday school teacher. And so the church is wondering if the children's department is quite where it needs to be. And so, and at the same time, um, you get to see more about you get to hear more about Miss Birdie, her story, particularly because the reporter goes to talk to her. She becomes a mentor for the reporter. And that's how Miss Birdie's story unfolds. And also, um, you just get to be a part of church life in a small town, and how they resolve issues, and how lots of things are interconnected in a small town life.
So there's probably a lot of good truth in there as well, even though it's fiction, right?
Well, right. I think Miss Birdie's Sunday school lessons are things that if I were teaching those lessons, that would probably sound a lot like Miss Birdie's lessons. So and then the way she encourages people, particularly in the Piggly Wiggly, those are some of my thoughts. So really, there are two alter egos in this book. One is Miss Birdie, which would be me at a much, much older age, me in the future perhaps. And the other is Hannah, which is me in the past. It's like a dream sequence, I guess, when you're writing fiction. You're part of all the different characters, or at least for me. And so I get to, it's in a sense, uh, me writing a letter to myself at both stages.
Oh, I like that. Well, what about the just the knowledge that you have with a children's Sunday school department and church life and how things go? Does that connect back to your own faith journey?
Yes, I am a member of First Baptist Church, 305 South Perry Street in Montgomery, and I've been a member of that congregation for about 30 years. And I think church is a really good way to organize life. I mean, you've got certainly the theological aspects and the spiritual benefits, but just the organization of it just gives you a way to be active in a community, and also to find a way to volunteer and to serve with others. And a couple of the things that I've done is, one, I have worked in the church kitchen in recent years. And the other thing is that I served in the preschool department, 4-year-old Sunday school. And that has been very eye-opening, to be with 4-year-olds, and to learn how to represent the church for them. And also the lessons have been so elementary and so useful that God loves us. Uh, Jesus is our friend. He wants us to be a friend to others. and he'll help us when we need him. And so those are very good lessons to hear from me. And so that my preschool time actually did influence the development of the Miss Birdie character because it was fresh on my mind. And I might have picked up another character if I'd volunteered in some other way.
Well, I understand that also during the pandemic, you were not only creative in putting together this book, but you also started something else during the pandemic.
Yeah, I started a podcast. I assume that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Can
you tell us more about that?
I called it Your Creative Purpose because I feel like we're all called to a certain purpose, and we're all called to a creative purpose because God is our creator. We're made in his image. So something of that image, something of the image of a creator interwoven into our lives. So it's a short form podcast about where for now it's been mostly 7 or 8 minutes where I highlight a particular creative principle. And the one I did not too long ago was how if you want to pursue a creative idea, you need a structure to do so, create your structure so that you'll show up for it. And so that principle is just basically create the structure and then show up in your structure and pursue your idea. Another one was, see things from a different perspective. And I think Miss Birdie would like the idea that one of them was, it's not too late to make a difference. So that's kind of just taking on a single principle and trying to weave a story around that and some takeaways. So, and I did that. You might be interested to know I did that. I've been doing these things on a shoestring budget. And the podcast was already had the microphone, and then I could record from my laptop. And there are some ways to get some music that there's certain free music sites, and then there's some low-cost music sites because you need to have something underlying your intro and your outro, and then the hosting, which because it's so short, mine only costs $5 a month, so I could be up and running for a pretty modest amount of money.
You're listening to Tab Talks. I'm your host, Jennifer Rash, here with co-host Debbie Campbell, and we're talking with professional writer Minnie Lamberth from Montgomery, Alabama, and she's sharing about some shoestring tips on how to put together a podcast, but also she's going to give us some really good creative and secrets, I guess. What do we want to say, Minnie, on how to just take our messaging and our writing and our marketing words up a notch, another level. What can we do to think through whatever it is we do, whatever career we're in, whatever role we play? What are some 1, 2, 3s that everyone should do? And whether they're writing, they're speaking, they're recording, whatever it is they're going to be doing in a communication style, what are some basics?
Well, first, I guess, understand who your audience is, because it's typically not the world. It's typically the certain group of people you intend to influence or you hope to influence. So know who the audience is, and then understand what your message is to that audience. And I think in copywriting, there is one of the concepts of copywriting is to have one idea. Not 30, but one idea. If you're writing a piece, I have trouble with having too many ideas in my pieces. So that the podcast has helped me to focus on one idea. So that's the other thing is know your audience, know your message, and don't narrow it down to the basics, what you actually want to communicate, because we all have a short attention span right now. I think the attention spans are shorter. I don't know if we all do. Somebody might still have a long one, but
we need to interview them if we need to find that person.
So it just and subheads help. So break it up, especially if it's marketing copy. If you're writing a novel or something like that, you might not need subheads because somebody's settling into your work to hear your story. But if it's marketing and messaging, break it up with subheads, and again, get somebody to take another look. I'm a pretty good proofreader for somebody else, but I do have I'll miss something of my own because you think you're reading ahead and you think you know what it says, so you don't realize you've left out an A, an, or the, and because you just know in your mind what you meant to say, so it's
You
easy
know,
to
that's
be
the
missed.
worst, to go back after something's published and you see those little crazy little typos or a word that's missing that you know better, but
Hmm.
like you said, Minnie, you just read right through it. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
great.
But yeah, and also grant yourself grace in most cases on that, unless it's some kind of really embarrassing typo. You just know that these do happen. So, um, so just accept that avoid them when you can and recognize that they do occur.
Well, one thing you do, Minnie, do you help people? Like, can somebody contact you and say, hey, can you help me get started with ideas or something?
Well, I do
They're out there.
work for other people. So sometimes that's individuals, sometimes that's companies. And
Okay.
I did help a gentleman in a leadership field craft his message, craft his book, and things like that. So he had some ideas that he wanted to communicate, and I helped him organize those ideas. So that is one way I serve. The other thing is um, I write for people, and I write in their voice, and I learn them and what's important to them. I do a lot of correspondence for one of my clients because he's a busy man, and he gets a lot of requests. So quite often I get an assignment from that organization. Will you draft a letter that's about this, that, or the other? So and it because I've been writing for them for so long, I know what their values are, and so uh, it helps to be able to mimic a voice and to and again, you know, the person and what's important and that kind of thing. So that gets interwoven into whatever you're doing for somebody else.
Tell us how you ended up in this field.
Well, I started, I wanted to be an advertising copywriter back in college, back in high school. And I went to Huntington College here and I got an English degree. And that's not really a specific route to a career in advertising, but I did get a job. I wrote for the college newspaper. So I did have a portfolio and that I took around to agencies in Birmingham and Montgomery right after graduation. And Montgomery is the place I got a job. And so I got hired as a copywriter for an ad agency, and I stayed there for several years. And then I segued for a time into public relations and public information, state government job, and then back at my alma mater, Huntington, for a short time. And then, because while I was doing all those things, I was I was building a network uh, of contacts with in advertising, marketing, public relations, association management fields. And these are the groups of people who need content. They need their content pipelines filled. They need they need writing for their magazines, their newsletters. And so because I had built uh, work skills, and because I had built a network, that's how I was able to go out and do this on my own. Because mostly for the last 20 years, I've either worked for somebody I know or somebody who knows somebody I know. And that has, I wanted to work for strangers at some point, but it's not working out. I still work for somebody I know or somebody who knows somebody I know. That's why the network and the contacts are so important. And before the pandemic, I would run into people at Costco or in the grocery store or anywhere and just have these conversations. And sometimes that would lead to, oh, I need to get you in touch with such and such. So it's nice that I've always been a part of my adult life has been spent in Montgomery. So it's good to be a part of a community and a field. And so
Well, of all of your experience, what do you think and what do you feel is the most rewarding or your favorite that you have that you like to do?
uh, um, I really love working all the types of work that I do. I like them all. I like writing the letter for the gentleman. I like writing the book for the other person to help draft that. I like writing website content. I like writing Facebook posts that I share with my friends. So I like working on my own creative projects. I like writing on the podcast. So basically, I like writing. So I don't. I mean, and I love getting assignments because it means I'm helping others, and that is, I do have a new philosophy that I developed in the pandemic. I watched how my response went from one thing to the other to the other. The first, the first few weeks and things were getting jostled. I wondered, how will I survive? And then I went to, okay, let me turn that question around. How can I thrive? And so that's where Miss Birdie came from, and that's where the podcast came from, because you don't get much energy from a question like, how will I survive? But when you look for a question like this is a creative coaching tip that I'm sure somebody would have told me. If you change the question around to how can I thrive, then it gives you more energy to look for solutions. And now the question is, how can I help others? Because that really is the relationship aspect of the work I do. It's helping others. I'm finding a way that it works when they are pleased with what I have done, and sometimes relieved with what I have done, because I've taken something off of them and I've helped them. Usually the people that I work for are under pressure from someone, whether it's their client, their customer, their boss. And so when I can answer their need and take that pressure off, then it's a win because they are appreciative and I get paid.
That's a nice little added benefit.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize you were actually doing this for money. Wait, what? What's going on here? I guess that's how you've managed to do this independently for 20 years. Again, I still think that's amazing because it is such a hard field to do as a self-employed writer, editor, that type thing. So I commend you for having that kind of longevity and
Yeah.
legacy.
Yeah.
All right, well, got just a couple minutes left. Any last minute tips for young writers just breaking in? You mentioned relationships and network a lot. What are some quick tips on how do they figure that out?
I don't know. Things have changed so much in the last 35 years. There was not the internet, the web, social media when I started out. There was no LinkedIn, but I think the things that do remain are you need writing skills. So and enter in a process of learning with that. If once you have your basic skills, don't stop there. Continue to learn, and allow people to edit you. Don't get offended if somebody wants to change. And that's another thing. When I'm writing for somebody else and they want to change it, it's their word. So if they want to change my words, the words belong to them. So accept edits and network. Uh, Build relationships, and think of how you can help others. I think those are the things that probably a transition from one era to another. Skills, service, and helping others.
Skills, service, and helping others.
And accepting edits.
Accepting it. Yes, that is a lesson that I think everyone has to walk through, that moment where they finally have to realize that it is helpful to have someone else make some suggestions.
Yeah. And
difficult to let go of the words sometimes. All right. Well, Minnie, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And I hope we are encouraging some young writers out there and those who maybe just need a little bump up in their messaging and marketing content. So tell us how someone could get in touch with you if they were interested.
I started my website, minnielamberth.com, and that has a lot of information, and it also has my email address and other contact information.
MinnieLamberth.com.
Yes, right.
All right, minnielamberth.com. Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next week.